Hi, everyone. This is Money Therapy with your host, me, Rachel Lauren, the COO and co founder of Debbie. I'd love to welcome Monica Thompson, financial creator extraordinaire and host of the From Debt to Checks podcast. She's been incredibly open about her debt journey online and has used it as a platform to help others feel empowered as they go through their own journeys. Hi, Monica. Really glad to have you here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
For sure. So, I know we met before, we got a chance to chat a little bit about your story, but, for the benefit of the audience, I'd love to kind of start from the beginning and hear a little bit about, how you grew up, how it was sort of in your family life. What did you see in your household when you were growing up when it comes to money?
I grew up in Maryland, from a middle class family. I had both my parents and one sibling in the home. And as far as money, they did not talk much about money. It was more so about what bills were due. It wasn't about saving or investing or paying off debt. It was just kind of, that you're going to die with debt. So that's kind of how it was growing up for me. But now, since I'm on this journey, that has changed. But we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. And why do you think that was in your family, that there was just this idea that debt is just the fact of life?
Honestly, I think that's just was passed down from family member to family member. It wasn't no one else on this kind of journey at all. And it was just kind of like, that's just what it is.
Right.
It was no one to actually introduce them to a lot of things about finances. So
Yeah.
that's just kind of what it was. And they did the best they can.
Right.
However, I wanted a little bit better.
Yeah.
Wanted to get out of my mess. So I knew it was something better for me to do.
Right. And what was your first experience in the credit system? So, what financial institution kind of approached you? What made it exciting for you, or why did you decide to kind of make that, decision to use credit cards or debt or things like that?
Actually, I was a teller at a credit union, and that was the first time I was introduced to debt. I needed a car, so I got a car loan. It was about $5,000, and then of course they tell you to cross sell their products
Mm-hmm.
to the members that came in, and of course, me being inquisitive. I wanted to get an overdraft protection loan too. I wanted to get the personal loan. So I
Yeah.
kind of wanted to get all the products too in the credit cards. So it kind of like started me going down this hole,
Yeah.
knowing I knew better. However, because I was cross selling these products, I felt I had to use them as well. And so I kind of got hooked into the whole debt cycle.
It's crazy because I'd say some of our biggest users and people who engage on our platform the most as well are actually the employees of the credit unions that we work with, not
Yeah.
even necessarily their own members. We
Yeah.
had we had a credit union approach us yesterday, and the way they found out about us was one of their employees had seen an ad for Debbie, and
Oh,
she was
wow.
following our account for over a year, and she actually signed up and started using the app, and she went to her credit union and said, maybe this is something we should be using.
Wow. How cool is that?
Yeah, it was crazy. So you were not the first person, I think, to have had this experience, despite working at a financial institution.
Yeah.
Um, and so when you started racking up the debt initially, the purchases, was it kind of out of necessity, or did you feel like there were things there, or maybe purchases you didn't need but you felt like you could afford because you now had the credit?
Honestly, it started out because I wanted the shiny things.
Yeah.
So it started there. I wanted what everybody else had, and then I had the card, so I can just swipe, right? Or I can
Yeah.
just get a loan for it and pay it back later. But then when I had my son, it became more of a necessity
Right.
where I had to use my cards to pay for some things. And it was just the two of us. And so it was hard. And, sometimes, you're kind of in a bind because if you don't have an emergency savings, it's like, okay, well, I have the credit card and I'll just pay it later. But then that became, like this rabbit hole of me constantly swiping my card and maxing the cards out and taking out personal loans and things
Right.
like that. So it got really bad.
So, do you think that, let's say, forget about sort of the shiny things, even had you not spent money on those, do you feel you still would have gotten into that same situation, when you had your son?
Oh, absolutely, I would have because I just didn't have the income for all the things I wanted him to do.
Yeah.
And then it was some medical things that came up that the insurance didn't cover. So again, by me not having emergency savings, I just looked to my credit cards and personal loans to pay for those things. So I
Right.
didn't want him to suffer because I didn't have the money. However, I was putting myself in debt doing those things.
Right. But so in that situation, do you think that, if during the beginning times when you did have the credit card, maybe we're buying those shiny things,
Hmm.
if you had built up that emergency savings, then you might have been able to avoid some of those problems down the line.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. If someone would have kind of pulled me to the side and told me, say, hey, maybe you should do emergency savings instead of these
Right.
credit cards. But those are not the things that they teach you working there. They want you to sell the products.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I got hooked into it.
Yeah. And what were some of those shiny things?
Clothes, shoes. I was into the whole like every 3 years I was trading my car in because I had to have something else. So it was
Yeah.
the negative equity on top of negative equity, and just things I probably can't even name. It was just food. Shopping trips, things I probably don't even have anymore. I'm sure I don't.
Yeah. I think the way we like to talk about it is not necessarily like bad spend versus good spend. It's
Mhm.
happy spend versus unhappy spend, meaning those things that you bought back then, do they still make you happy? Is that still something that you utilize to this day and you feel like kind of benefited your life in some way? Or were they things that were kind of fleeting?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Didn't need them. Looking at n- way things are now, I didn't need them at all. It was just, I think it was more of an emotional thing,
Yeah.
where I was just kind of feeding, like maybe some depression going on, or just, I wanted to be like everyone else, and I just kind of want to keep up with the Joneses. So it was a lot of that.
Yeah. And I think we see that a lot where financial kind of decision making where folks, spend money, it's not even necessarily bad decision making. Sometimes there's something else underlying, some, like you said, depression or anxiety, or some coping mechanism to deal with other problems,
Hmm.
that need to be, I guess, tackled beforehand. So yeah, it's a multi-layered issue, I would say.
Yeah. Mm.
And so what was that trigger point for you where you said, no more, I need to get myself out of this situation, and I need to fix this?
Honestly, when they stopped telling me no for more credit, when I maxed out everything and my debt to income ratio was like pretty much through the roof,
Mm,
um, enough was enough at that point. And what they don't tell you, when you're working there, because you work there and they know you're getting a paycheck, even though your debt to income ratio is already over, they'll still give you the loan.
right.
So it was kind of like I benefited because I was an employee. However, you guys are helping me contribute to my debt. And that's what was happening. But yeah, that breaking point was, I had to figure something else out because I couldn't get any more money.
Right.
Hmm.
So okay, so they wouldn't give you more credit, and you were maxed out, and it really wasn't, it wasn't that you didn't have money. Well, I guess it was a little bit where you needed more cash to kind of maintain your lifestyle. And
Hmm.
so what did you decide to do? What was the sort of next step where you were like, okay, I don't have any more credit that I can tap into to, fund my lifestyle?
Hmm.
What was the option?
So the first option, was I tried one of those debt consolidation companies where, they combine all of your debt and you pretty much paying them a fee, and they're the ones who are mailing the checks out to the creditors.
Gotcha. So not a loan, but more like settlement where they're
Right.
negotiating on your behalf and you're sending them the payment and they're kind of putting it all into one.
Correct. So
Gotcha.
I did that for about a year, maybe a year and a half, and I felt like I wasn't making any progress. The payment, that I was sending to them was still pretty steep for me.
Mm,
So it was kind of like, okay, I've tried. So what's left was bankruptcy. So I filed bankruptcy, and that was in 2007. And
and how
did
much debt did you have at that point?
it was probably about 40 or 50,000.
Wow. And that
Yeah,
was all across credit cards.
credit cards, personal loans, overdraft.
Yep.
It was a car wrapped up into that one as well. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
And so when you declared bankruptcy, how did that go? What was the process like? Did you feel like it was, an easy process, a difficult process? I can't imagine it was easy, but you tell me.
It was pretty difficult. I mean, it kind of make you feel like, wow, like I have to do all of these things just for them to cancel all of my debt because I did a chapter 7. And so of course you had to take like a class at first, and then they pretty much give you these forms where you pretty much have to tell them your whole life, like how much money is coming in, how much is going out, what do you do as far as work. So it was kind of embarrassing, to be honest. And the process took about, I want to say, almost like 9 to 10 months
Mm.
for it to be completed. But even still, I still had to wait until I got that discharge notice from the court. So I would say probably almost a year.
Wow.
It took me to go through that.
And did you have to pay for a lawyer?
I did have to pay for a lawyer to do that. Yeah.
And how much do lawyers typically charge for bankruptcy?
At that time, because it was 2007, I think I paid maybe about like $500 to $700. It was something like that.
Wow. Okay. So
Mhm.
that's not. I was expecting a lot more. I think for bankruptcy law, but that's still a lot. If you are sort of in $40,000 of debt. Uh,
Yeah, and that
so
was then. So I mean, of course, from 2007, we're 2023. So you know, the cost, I'm sure, has doubled, if not tripled.
100%. Yeah. And lawyers keep on charging more. We know that. Some of our lawyers charge us, I'd say, around $800 an hour. So to hear that you were able to get the whole thing done for $700, God
Yes.
bless you. That's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and so you did the bankruptcy, and usually what you see when people kind of hit that rock bottom moment, so to speak, is that's usually a trigger for them to really make a change in their life for the better. And it sounds like this bankruptcy process was really that moment for you. Do
Mhm.
you feel like that caused you to make that change, or not really?
After the bankruptcy, for a while, I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to ask for any kind of credit. It was just kind of, like I just wanted to work with cash, and that's it. However, I got myself back in a hole after that. But yeah, I mean, as far as just the whole trauma of it all, it was definitely embarrassing. I mean, it was something that I couldn't talk to my friends about because they wouldn't understand. And it took me a while to tell my mom and my dad, but it was kind of like acceptable in a way.
Right.
Just you kind of have to do what you have to do. But to me, it was a big deal, especially working in a credit union, because it was just like, wow, how can I go to work? Like they're going to find out,
Did
what are
they?
they going to say? Yeah, they actually,
Wow.
they did. But it was after I was already an employee. So of course that didn't affect me at the time because I
Right.
did eventually become a loan officer,
Did-
a couple of years.
Wow.
So of course that would have been a conflict of interest, right? But
Right.
it happened, like after all that. But yeah, it was revealed to them, and I did have to share that. So I mean, they understood, but it was kind of like I had a stamp on my
Right.
forehead.
And
Yeah.
did anyone feel any guilt, or that was more of a stamp on you that you had done something wrong?
It was more of a stamp on me that I've done something wrong
Wow.
because I know better.
Right. That's sad, right? I think we make moral judgments about folks who get into debt, that it's sort of this moral problem.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, you knew what you knew, but it wasn't necessarily about the knowledge, right? The knowledge wasn't the thing that was going to help you make the right decision. It was your circumstances and the things you saw growing up, and sort of the emotional aspect of the debt, that allowed you to make those decisions. And those are just things that we never really talk about, right? Even today, we talk a lot about financial literacy, at least more than we used to kind of 15, 20 years ago.
Hmm.
But it seems like even that's not really helping or kind of moving the needle in any direction.
Right.
And you worked at a credit union, and
I know.
it still happened.
It does. More often than amongst the employees, and it's sad. It's definitely something that needs to be addressed
Yeah.
because a lot of us pretty much went in debt who I've worked with working there. So,
Oh, so you weren't the only one.
oh no, I was the only one who filed bankruptcy.
Right.
The other people just kind of struggled and kind of crawled their way out of it, but
Right.
I just wanted it to go away. It was, I couldn't sleep at night. It was keeping me up. I was tired, just frustrated, the phone calls and everything, for the late payments. I mean, it was
Yeah.
a lot to deal with.
And there might have been others who were going through bankruptcy also who just weren't admitting it to other folks.
Right.
If that was sort of the culture of the place where you got all of these benefits, and
Hmm.
there were a lot of people who came from the same background as you, I would imagine that they might have been in the same situation and were just too scared to raise their hand.
Oh yeah. I'm sure of it.
So the second wave of debt, after the bankruptcy, it seems like, things maybe changed for kind of 6 to 9 months, right? You were too scared, you were traumatized of
Hmm.
using credit, but then got back into it. What was the reason for that? What do you think drove that?
Honestly, not having an emergency fund because life happens, right?
Right.
And, when things come up, if you don't have the cash on hand, what do? You ask for a loan.
Right.
So, that kind of started, but I did not go back into a whole lot of credit card debt. It was more so, personal loans
Mm,
or borrowing from my 401k, things of that nature. And then, of course, I had to get another car because the car that I had, it was an accident. So it was kind
okay.
of, instead of me, I mean, I did opt for a used car. I didn't go for a new car. So I did change that habit.
Yeah.
However, the note still was a little bit expensive. I should have went a little cheaper. So I didn't quite learn my lesson. Got kind of went
Right.
in the same hole, not as deep as I was, but I did get myself back into some debt.
Gotcha. So this theme of the emergency fund, it keeps coming up, right? So sort of the first time around, don't have an emergency fund, started dipping into credit. Second time around, don't have the emergency fund, dipping into credit. And it's sort of this vicious cycle, right? Because once you start building up the debt and now you're making the payments, you don't have enough cash sort of left over from your income to start saving in an emergency fund. And so, once you got out of debt, there was sort of that question mark of now what? And especially if, like you said, life hits you within those first 6 months, what do? You immediately go back into it. So tell me a little bit about where you're at now, right? So you had that 40K in the beginning,
Mhm.
paid that off through the bankruptcy. How much did you rack up in the second wave, I guess, of the debt?
So the second wave, which is actually current,
Yeah.
because so let me go back a little bit. So the first time after the bankruptcy, it was about $47,000. Like I got back up to debt, um, and then I paid it down actually to about 17,000. And I actually had like a settlement from my accident, and instead of me, using that to buy more shiny things, I put it towards my debt. So that took a huge chunk.
Yeah.
They got it down to 17,000. And so from there, I was able to purchase my first home. So I have my first home. I still have the same car. So now currently, my debt is about 348,000.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of that is, of course, my home.
Right.
I have like a $7,000 car note that's left, and I only have one credit card, so that's like $1,500. So I have learned my lesson from there. Like one is enough. And then it's a personal loan that I do have that I'm paying off. But those are the only things that I have for right now.
Gotcha. And so what's your plan now? How much are you paying off every month? What are sort of your monthly payments between, the mortgage, the auto loan, the personal loan, the credit cards?
Hmm.
And are you now saving for the emergency fund? Do you now have that money on the side?
Okay, so I did have an emergency fund. However, my dog Cushing's disease. So, of course,
Oh,
that costs money for, testing and medication and things like that. And then the car that I have is a 2015 Honda Civic, and it has been giving me the ringer. So
oh
I
no.
have been putting money into my car. So I have totally depleted my emergency savings account. So I am saving every paycheck to kind of put the money back. So right now I don't have an emergency fund because actually I just used the rest of it this past Sunday because my battery died in my car.
Oh my goodness.
So, and then 2 weeks before that, it was like one of the engine coils,
Uh, and
and
you don't win anything anyway because the leasing market is so expensive right now.
Yeah.
The only thing that's worth doing is to buy like the crappiest little car for like $4,000. My husband and I were looking at like an old smart car with 70,000 miles on it for
Mm-hmm.
$4,000, but we live in New York City, so even that's not worth it because
Oh,
we'll
yeah.
maybe use it like once a month to like go out, on
Yeah.
a hike or something. Uh, so
Yeah, so I'm building my emergency fund back up. But I do, as far as retirement savings, though, I do contribute to my employees' 401k.
okay,
So I do the match amount, and I do have two other small savings accounts that I do just automate
yeah.
just two small payments there. But as far as the emergency savings, that's separate from the two other separate savings accounts.
Have you considered at all reducing slightly your retirement contribution just so you can increase your emergency fund in the meantime, just to kind of get it back to a stable level so that you're liquid?
I thought about it, but I'm so scared. And I say that because when I first started my 401k, because I'm a federal government employee, and I wasn't contributing the max for 17 years, and I'm 43 now, and I recently started contributing the max, so I feel like I'm
Right.
catching up. From all the money that I left on the table,
Right.
and I say literally, I was doing like $100, 50 or $100 a check for
Right.
17 years.
Well,
So I left so much money on the table, and
look,
I'm so scared.
let me put it this way though, right? If let's say you do end up having to go back into debt because you don't have the fund, you'll
Uh-huh.
have to dip back into that 401k. You're going to miss out on those earnings, and or you're going to have to take out a loan, which is likely going to have a much higher interest than whatever earnings you're going to be getting from that retirement account. So just my 2 cents. I
Mhm.
think maybe even if it's like $100 or a couple hundred, I think it's worth it, to
Yeah.
try to reduce it maybe even for 6 months.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I have no argument.
I'll tell you this, when I started Debbie,
Uh-huh.
we didn't offer 401ks for a company that like, purports to help people with their debt and their finances. Like we
Uh-huh.
were just too small for it to make sense. It was only the owners and all of that. So I was still obviously contributing to my own personal IRA,
Okay.
and we're now kind of setting up a 401k because we're hiring more people.
Okay.
But for a while I felt bad. I was like, I'm not contributing. At the same time, I also cut my salary significantly to start this
Mhm.
company, so
Mhm.
I was barely saving. And I told myself, at this point, especially the way the market and the economy looks, I
Mhm.
need to be liquid, right? I need cash, because the worst thing is when you get into that situation again where shit hits the fan,
Mhm.
pardon my language, you're gonna want to have that cash around. And if it's sitting in a retirement account, like it's great. Like I see that number when I
Mhm.
look at my Fidelity account, I see that number, it makes me smile, but then I remember that I can't touch it until I'm like 65. So, and that makes me sad.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's just that. So I've been saving now more than I've been kind of putting towards retirement. That's gonna
Mhm.
switch,
Okay.
I think, probably come next year. But
Okay.
in the meantime, that's at least what I've been doing.
Yeah.
And so, how much do you sort of have now that you're setting aside in terms of savings?
So I pay myself. Right now, all I can do is about $100, and I pay myself first. Whereas in the past, I didn't.
Right.
Um, but $100, definitely going towards the emergency fund per pay, and then the two small savings accounts that I have is just $25 each. And those are just kind of like just stash away some cash somewhere else, so just in case something else happens, I
Yeah.
can tap into those first versus my emergency fund.
Gotcha.
And so
And
just
what are the
accumulating just
payments?
time,
And what are the payments right now across all of your different debts?
about $3,500.
About 30. That is a lot.
Most of it is my mortgage.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha. Okay.
in the Washington D.C. area, and it's very expensive to live here.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's about how much we pay in rent in
Yeah,
in New York City. But on two incomes,
yeah,
so it's a little bit different. Do you get any help, or it's just you?
it's just me.
I gotcha.
Yeah, it's just
And
me.
so as you started this process, what were the biggest changes that you've had to make?
Biggest change would be one, paying myself first, like I mentioned earlier. Because in the past, I will pay all the bills first. And then if there was anything left, then I will put something towards my savings. However, that wasn't working because that's what got me into debt in the first place. So that's one of them. And then living below my means. And I know everything now is, super convenient, but honestly, I don't use all the subscription boxes that I had, so I cut most of those. Of course, I cut the cable cord. That
Yep.
was hard. So I stream everything now. And then, as far as, going out with the girlfriends, like I just, I have to say no sometimes.
Yeah.
I can't, do the happy hours, the brunches, and everything else, because the bigger goal for me is, I just need to get this debt paid.
Yeah.
So I'd rather use that money and either, put half of it in my savings of what I would pay towards a brunch and then the other half towards that.
Do you ever do anything fun when you know your friends are out having fun at a bar? Like, do you ever do anything for yourself?
Watch Netflix and drink wine.
Love it. Love it. Do that in the bathtub. Like, bring your laptop to the bathtub.
Right.
Have a wine glass in there.
I
It's
know.
you don't need anyone else. There's no FOMO involved.
I gotta get one of those wooden tray things I
Oh
see
yeah.
people have. Yeah,
Oh
that.
yeah. Next time the girls say we're going out for brunch, you'll find me in my bathtub.
Yep,
That's
absolutely. But yeah, wine works.
absolutely. Wow. Okay, so those were the biggest changes, and what was the hardest of all of those changes for you to make?
I would say out of those living below my means, like I'm in the Washington D.C. area, so it's kind of like it's expensive here, living, just food costs. I mean, just everything, and just kind of going through how much I spend per month and just reducing, everything almost by half was hard. And cooking out of the freezer, doing out of the
Yeah,
pantry instead of stopping and, grab and goes, so it was hard
yeah,
to actually just, you know, be on that kind of rice and beans kind of,
yeah,
budget, but, the ultimate goal within, if I keep it up, within 2 years, I will be debt free,
yeah.
consumer debt free.
Amazing.
If I stay on the same path.
And did you kind of start with baby steps? Meaning, when you changed your habits, when you started living below your means, was that like an all or nothing situation, or did you do it kind of step by step?
I had to do it step by step because I felt like if I did it all at once, then it'll be so easy for me to go right back to where I was.
Absolutely.
So I had to take it one step at a time. I think the cable was the hardest.
Oh, I have a tip for you with that one actually.
Okay, was
We have a bootleg streaming service through
uh-huh.
like someone in Brazil that we pay $200 a year, and you get everything. You get HBO, you
Really?
get all the cable channels. Yeah, absolutely everything. So I can hook you
Can you
up
send me a
after
link?
this.
Oh,
If you want, I'll hook you up. It's great. I got it for my parents. There's even Russian TV, Chinese TV. If you want
what?
to watch all the propaganda, they have subtitles. It's wonderful. You
Oh,
want to
that's
see
amazing.
you want to see how they're talking about the United States and Russia
Yeah.
during the Ukraine war, you can watch that. Like,
Oh, that's pretty awesome.
they've got everything.
Wow, and $200 a year? You
Yeah.
know how much my cable bill was?
Yeah, my parents are paying $500 a month for Optimum. They had all these
Oh,
crazy charges, and literally all they were watching was Russian television.
wow.
So I for like 2 years they were doing this, and they knew that they shouldn't be. And I'm like, we need to cancel all of this.
Hmm.
Get you guys some streaming services. We were doing a ton of research, and my mother-in-law got us hooked on this bootleg streaming service. So I don't know how they do it. I don't know how it's legal. It's probably not, but
Hmm.
nobody said it looks really legit, the whole platform and everything. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
But you
Thanks.
need to have an Amazon Fire TV, so, or Apple TV. If it's Roku, it doesn't work on Roku. FYI.
Okay. I gotta get
Yeah.
that.
It's like $40
Oh,
to
okay.
get an Amazon Fire TV stick, so it's worth it. Okay, and so what's your plan now for the next year, and hopefully for the next 5 years?
For the next year, I would say by the ending of this year, I would have $1,000 in my emergency savings. However, $1,000 is not enough, so I need to increase, my emergency savings to $2,000. So I plan to at least have that by, I would say, June of next year, to have just the $1,500. And as far as the next 5 years, I plan to be consumer debt free within the 2 years.
Yeah.
And within the 5 years, I plan to be able to save and invest more. And then I want to increase the payments that on my mortgage so I can pay my house off early.
Gotcha.
So that's my plan.
And what are you doing now for a living? Are you still working in the credit union industry, in the same field, or something else?
Federal government.
Federal government. Oh, right, you mentioned that.
Yeah.
They pay well or not so much?
Yeah, they pay well. They definitely pay well, and I am due for a raise, so that'll put me up to about
Okay.
85,000 a year, which is good. But for this area, I really think you need to make six figures, to be honest.
Right. Especially if you're on your own, right? If you had a dual income, then it's a totally different story. I would not be able to afford to live in my apartment if it was just me. My husband right now is the breadwinner, and so I really appreciate that, from his side. So
Yeah.
I can imagine how difficult it must be doing that all on your own.
It is. It's very difficult, but I mean, I do side hustles also. So
yeah. Oh, tell me about that. I was gonna ask.
So I used to, which I'm starting again, but I sell clothes on Poshmark.
Okay.
And in the past, I would go to thrift stores and actually purchase clothes and resell them on Poshmark. But because I need some closet space, I have been selling some of my own clothes on Poshmark. So, I mean, it's not, huge income, but it's something, right?
Yeah.
A little bit helps. And so instead of me using that money to buy something else on Poshmark, I go ahead and cash it out.
Yeah, I've never had luck with Poshmark. For
Okay.
some reason. Nobody ever buys my things on Poshmark, but
Okay.
I always go to the physical consignment stores. I have a route on 27th Street, New York, where they have 4 or 5 different consignment stores. And so I start with Crossroads Trading Company, and whatever they don't take, I go to the next one. Whatever they don't take, I go to the next one. And at the end of the day, I'm all out. All my clothes are sold, and I'll maybe make a few $100 in a session. But I'll basically do it every season, right? So whatever that season is, or once a year, I'll sort of clear out everything in my closet, say, okay, these are things I don't wear anymore, and then I'll go. But Facebook Marketplace has been good, Poshmark, and I've heard this from folks. So I'm surprised you've been successful there. I need your tips and tricks because I have not been able to sell anything there.
It's honestly about how much you share your items, right? So I found it's a separate app called ClosetMate, and you can actually set it to share your closet how many times you want. And they have an option where you can share your items to whatever parties they're having. So like in the morning time, I'll go and take my shower, but I'll set my phone to share my items automatically, so I don't have to sit there and push one by one.
Right. Okay. I'm gonna need to follow your advice. I'm gonna need
Yeah.
to do what you do. The one thing I'm trying to sell, maybe you can help me out, is I bought a Chanel bag on everything but the house.
Okay.
And that was the most expensive thing I ever bought. And I bought it for $1,000, which is not that much for a Chanel backpack.
Okay.
And I've been trying to sell it, and it's been impossible. Like I just want to make $500 profit on it. I don't need a crazy amount.
Yeah.
Like I bought it just as so that I could sell it and make money on it, because I was like, $1,000 for a Chanel bag. Where are you gonna find that kind of price?
Right.
But
have you tried the real? Because that's another app.
Yeah, I've heard of them. We have one down the street. I just read the reviews and I was so scared because people were saying that they lost their item, or that it didn't sell, and then when they went back to try to go get it, it was damaged or something else happened.
Wow.
So yeah. Anyway.
Okay. Wow. Sorry, I never tried to sell on that one, but I always see the TV commercials.
Yeah. I'll find it one day. Maybe I'll sell it to a friend and someone else will take it off my hands.
Okay.
Well, this has been really awesome, and it's been so great to hear your story and to see sort of the progression, and everything that you've done kind of up until this point. And obviously, you still have a ways to go, and folks can follow your journey. You want to tell everyone kind of where they can find you, and where they can kind of keep up with your progress?
I am on Instagram, and you can follow me at From Debt to Checks, and that's FROMDEBT, the number two, and then CHECKS. And then the podcast, you can follow me. You can listen on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, and it's under From Debt to Checks also.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Monica. This was a fantastic conversation. I feel like I learned a lot from you. I
Yes.
hope you learned something from me as well, and I hope to see you again.
Yeah, will do. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for joining Money Therapy with me, Rachel Lauren, and I hope to see you all again. Bye.